Today we are going to learn about the respiration process in living beings. Respiration in organism. We can understand respiration as a biochemical process where food material taken during the process of nutrition is utilized by the cells. How? The food materials goes inside the cell are being acted upon by enzymes, as we can see in the figure 1. The glucose molecule, which is of 6 carbon atoms in the cytoplasm of the cell, breaks up into 3 carbon molecule pyruvic acid or pyruvate. From this stage, it has 3 destinations. Either the pyruvic acid will completely broken down into the 6 molecule of carbon dioxide, 12 molecules of water, and huge amount of energy when it passes to mitochondria. So this process of glucose, pyruvic acid, and mitochondrial breakdown is known as aerobic respiration or simply cellular respiration. Whereas we can see there's 2 alternate pathways for the breaking down of glucose molecules once the pyruvate is formed. And both of these are called as anaerobic process of respiration because they are taking place either in the absence of oxygen or in less oxygen environment. First, we will see the formation of ethanol in yeast and some other anaerobic bacteria. We see the pyruvic molecules is acted upon by enzymes and is broken down into 2 carbon compound ethanol or ethyl alcohol. So partial breakdown of pyruvic acid here gives rise to 1 molecule of carbon dioxide. The energy produced in this process is equivalent to 2 ATP. Whereas in case of the muscles, particularly during the heavy exercise, we used to find cramps in our muscles. It happens because these pyruvic acids are not getting sufficient amount of oxygen. Therefore, in order to mitigate the requirement of oxygen and energy, they are just converted into the lactic acid. So conversion of pyruvic acid into the lactic acid is not the process of breaking down of pyruvic acid. So we don't find here any carbon dioxide is emitting out. But this conversion process yields 2 molecule of ATP. So we have seen that the process of breakdown of glucose molecule is not throughout uniform. It can be broadly categorized into the aerobic process and anaerobic process. Aerobic process of respiration is also called as cellular respiration, where glucose molecule, which is of 6 carbon atoms, are completely broken down into 6 carbon dioxide, water molecules, and energy, whereas in absence of oxygen, glucose molecules are never being broken down completely. So incomplete breakdown of glucose molecules always yields less amount of energy in the cells. The energy released during the cellular respiration is immediately used in synthesize a molecule called as ATP. ATP is also called as energy currency because this is only the form of energy that can be utilized in all types of chemical reaction or metabolic reactions in the cells. The process of formation of ATP is an endothermic process. It takes place through the endothermic reactions where we can see that the 1 molecule of ATP combines with inorganic phosphate Pi by utilizing around 30.5 kilojoule of energy. So ATP is the chemical form of energy. The dissolution of the bond of ADP and Pi again releases the same amount of energy which is required during the chemical reactions. So we have seen in the figure, we can see that how does the ATP molecule is being formed. One ADP molecules combines with Pi and it yields ATP. However, the process of ATP formation requires energy and enzymes in the process. We can perform an activity in which we will see that carbon dioxide is released during the respiration process. We can see in the diagram there is a flask, and inside the flask there are some germinated seeds. The flask is being totally disconnected with the environment by means of a cord. Outside the flask there is a beaker. So flask and beaker both are being connected by delivery tube. Inside the flask we find a very small test tube which is filled with the KOH solution. So in the figure we can understand the arrangement of the apparatus to demonstrate this experiment. What is the aim of the experiment? The aim of the experiment is to understand carbon dioxide is released during the process of respiration. This time we will demonstrate it with the help of the seeds, germinated seeds. So once the setup is been organized, the setup is been left for a few hours, we find that the water is being raised in the delivery tube. So what causes the raising of the water in the delivery tube? It is due to the decreasing the volume of air inside the flask. What happens? The KOH molecule, being the CO2 absorbent, absorbs the carbon dioxide molecules. So the oxygen utilized by the germinated seeds in the finite environment of the flask, where no air can come and go outside it, will actually causes the release of volume, decrease of volume within the flask. That causes a suction inside the delivery tube, and that is the reason why the water raises up in the delivery tube. We can conclude this that the carbon dioxide has been involved because KOH is the main factor which has been caused the absorption of the CO2 molecule. We will also try to understand the process of respiration in plants. As we know that plants are also the living beings, but the exchange of gas in the plants is very different than that of the animals. So let us try to understand how does the process of exchange of gases are taking place in plants. Plants have a very important organ, that is the leaf. Leaf, we have learned in the previous topics that they are having very tiny pores called as stomata that also facilitates the exchange of gases. Apart from the stomata, the older parts of the stem and root are having some passive opening through which the exchange of gases are taking place. Also, the root hairs are playing very important role in exchange of gases. Plant usually produces oxygen during the daytime, and during the night time the rate of photosynthesis decreases, so they releases out the carbon dioxide. So what will trigger the intake of carbon dioxide and intake of oxygen in the plant depends upon the relative process of the photosynthesis and respiration in plants that varies with the day and night process. As we have seen, the process of exchange of gas was very different in plants. So even in the animals it is not uniform. For example, we can see in case of fishes, they don't take oxygen or they never exchange gases through the atmosphere directly, rather they are taking passively through the process of diffusion oxygen and carbon dioxide from water. So aquatic animals are having the filter like organ which is gills. Even we can see in the case of insects, they are having very small tiny pores on their body surface called as spiracles. So aquatic animals or animals which are not that much evolved are not taking the oxygen molecules directly from the atmosphere. Rather, they prefer it to take it from the film of water or from the water. Now we will try to understand the process of breathing in terrestrial organisms, particularly in the human beings. In human beings, there is a very defined pathway of breathing or pathway for the exchange of gases. It begins from the nostril. Nostril opens into a cavity called as nasal passage. From the nasal passage we can see it continues into the tube-like structure called as trachea. Trachea further branches out into bronchus. Bronchus further branches into bronchioles, and finally at the end of the bronchioles we find very delicate sac-like structures are there. It is called as alveoli. So in totality, if we see that entire breathing path, it begins with the nostril that continues into the chamber called as nasal passage, thereafter the trachea, then the bronchus, then bronchioles, and finally at the alveolus. So alveolus is the area where exchange of gas are taking place at first sight. The trachea of the human beings are being protected by C-shaped cartilaginous ring around. It provides them the strength so that it cannot be collapsed during its elastic movement through the process of breathing. Alveolus are very delicate structures. It is just a single cell thickening made up of squamous epithelial tissues. At one of the corner of the alveolus, there is a very delicate embedded lining of capillaries for the exchange of gases. So in human beings, we can see they have evolved to take oxygen from the atmosphere directly, unlike the fishes and the insects, which are passively dependent upon for the uptake of oxygen from the environment. Here we can see the exchange of gases are taking place vigorously and actively through a delicate and strong system of breathing. We will also try to understand some of the disease that is related with the breathing problem. One is such kind of disease, emphysema. It is a lung condition where the shortness of the breath is taking place. It happens because due to some certain regions, maybe due to the smoking or some industrial pollution, the alveolar sacs get disturbed or damaged. So person used to fall under such condition where he or she feels shortness of breath. Breathing cycle. Now let us try to understand the process of exchange of gases in human beings. As we have seen in the previous slides, once the air enters inside the lungs, so lungs has many small units for the exchange of gases, which is called an alveolus. It is a very delicate structure. We can see in this diagram, figure number 7. This is the alveolus. It is being encircled by means of the blood capillaries. So air comes inside and it gets bombarded on the surface of the alveolus, and that facilitates, or we can say it speeds up the process of exchange of gases. Oxygen molecules come inside the blood capillaries. Similarly, the carbon dioxide goes inside the alveolar sac from the blood capillaries. It happens under the differential pressure gradient plus concentration gradient of oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules. So the process of exchange of gases are taking place at two places. First is the lungs, where it takes place in alveolus and between the blood capillaries. Next, once the blood is being pumped in different parts of the body and the oxygenated blood which is being carried by the RBC molecules which having the hemoglobin which readily combines with the oxygen and forms a compound called as oxyhemoglobin. The hemoglobin molecules works in two ways. It has affinity both for oxygen and carbon dioxide, but the affinity of the oxygen and carbon dioxide toward the hemoglobin is a differential concentration of both of the molecules. Whatever is maximum in the concentration, hemoglobin combines with that. So we see in this case here oxygen concentration is higher, so it leads to the dissociation of the carbon dioxide and hemoglobin molecules. Hemoglobin molecules get freed and it again combined with the oxygen molecules and makes a compound oxyhemoglobin. From here, these oxyhemoglobin molecules are being carried out by the blood capillaries to the cells and tissue. Here in this figure number 8, we can see the blood capillaries are carrying the RBCs having the hemoglobin in them, and these hemoglobins are not free here. It is combined with the oxygen, a compound called as oxyhemoglobin. But what happens here in this case? Here carbon dioxide is maximum because cells are doing the cellular respiration process. So being high in concentration, carbon dioxide causes the dissociation of the oxyhemoglobin compound. Again, hemoglobin atom becomes free, molecule become free, and freed oxygen enters inside the cells because differential ratio of the oxygen across the cell membrane we find inside the blood capillary is higher, inside the cell it is less. So oxygen molecules here in this figure we see the oxygen diffuses inside the cell. Similarly, respiration process is taking place, so carbon dioxide released in huge amount, so their concentration is much higher in comparison to the concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood capillaries, so they will diffuse out. But unlike the oxygen molecules, carbon dioxide never directly forms a compound with the hemoglobin molecules. First, carbon dioxide molecules dissolves in the plasma by making a compound with the water molecules and acid, carbonic anhydrase, and thereafter it forms a combined compound with the hemoglobin molecule that is called carbaminohemoglobin molecules. From here the carbon dioxide will be pushed to the heart, and from the heart they will go to the lungs, and again we see the carbon dioxide are coming out to the alveolar sac due to the differential concentration, and finally they are being thrown outside through the vigorous and voluntary process of exhalation. So this is the overall process of breathing, exchange of gases in human being. The lungs has always a definite proportion of air inside that we cannot expel out it even if we try vigorously to expel them. That permanent set of volume of air is called as residual volume of air. Thank you for watching the video.